Okay, good morning everybody. It's Rabbi Kolakowski again here. I just watched a video now from Rabbi Yonatan Levy. I'm a big fan of listening to him. Even though certain things I might disagree with, I would say most things, even that other people would disagree with him on, I do agree with him on. And it's okay that we disagree, of course. It should go without saying that it's okay that we disagree. I watched the video, it must have been from a few months back, probably sometime in the fall. I didn't look at the date. It could have been from a few years ago, actually, I don't know. And the question of secular studies and sacred studies. And what he said is that there's nothing secular about secular studies. He said if he brings from various sources that it's actually a sacred duty for us to be knowledgeable in secular wisdom. He quotes the Rambam. That's where he starts. He starts with the Gemara. He goes through history. Starts with the Gemara, which says that someone who is the Gemara teaches that there were two opinions. There was the opinion of Rabbi Shimon Yochai and the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shimon Yochai said that you should just study Torah all day, and Rabbi Shmuel says no, you have to study. It starts out with Rabbi Shmuel that the time for work, you work, and the time for study, you study, even when that means seasons of the year. And Rabbi Shmuel says if you plow in the plowing time, you plant in the planting time, and you reap in the reaping time, you harvest in the harvesting time, what will happen to the Torah? And excuse me, Mara Briggs, that many did harv also Rabbi Shimon Yochai also be Adam. Many tried Rabbi Shimon's way and they were unsuccessful. And V'hari also Rabbi Shmuel also be Adam. And many followed the ways of Rabbi Shmuel, meaning the way of Rabbi Shimon, only to study all day and not to work. And they were successful, and then certain people they worked and they studied and they were successful, meaning both in their work and in their study they were successful. He says this is not just a gadata. This is according to the Rambam. It's understood to be halacha. It's understood to be a legal precedent, where he says that if someone believes that they can just sit and study all day and live off of charity, they are pretty much destroying Judaism. Now, what he says, and I guess maybe he's paying some attention to this, is that he says, there were certain people, it would seem, because it says Harbei also Rabbi Shimon will also be Adam, but so it means that many who tried to be like Rabbi Shimon were not successful. Well, there perhaps were individuals who were successful, and Rabbi Yonatan says that indeed there are certain people who are successful in this path. But for the majority of people, there is nothing about this. It's not for most people. And that being said, the Rambam, Maimonides, sometimes will seem to contradict himself. Generally, what we'll say is that something that he wrote earlier in life in the Parashat Mishnayot Parashim Shnayos, that we would, and then he contradicts himself later in the, later in his life in the Mishnah Torah. Whatever's in the Mishnah Torah, that's more authoritative. But Minei Uvei in the Mishnah Torah, you also have these arguments from Hilchos Talmud Torah, where he says you should not study all day, but then in the Hilchos Shmita V'Yovelos, where he says that the Levites, that was their job, to sit and study all day. And today, anybody who has a calling to live like a Levite may do so and study Torah all day and dedicate their lives to divine service, both worship service and service to the community, which includes teaching ministry, even if one is not from a family of Levites. Any human being, meaning a Ger Tzedek, also could decide to dedicate their lives to God and to service the community in the way that the ancient Levites did. And that being said, the common people who worked were agrarian, and the Levites were metropolitan, were urban people, or at least suburban people. It's an important part of that ancient history. And so, again, there's room for diversity in the Jewish community. I think this is the major thing, because Rabbi Levy is saying that basically my way or the highway. But then he's painting other groups who have a certain approach as also being my way or the highway, which is kind of how he ends the video. Basically, he's saying these are big issues in the news today. Groups like Yafed and this and that, and the question of the Hasidic yeshivas for boys, how much secular studies are they teaching? Are they meeting legal requirements and so forth? I think there's a few there's a few issues to address here, most of which have nothing to do with Judaism. Living in America and interacting with the American society, just as much as we cannot expect, although there are some foolish people who expect things like this, we can't I remember someone, I'll start off with this, with an extreme example. I remember attending a lecture from Rabbi Tuvia Singer when I was a teenager, and he said, someone asked him, we got to get the government involved to shutting down these missionaries. We got to get President Clinton to shut them down. He's like, what are you talking about? Like, this is the biggest anti-missionary. He's like, no. That's not how these things work. That's not how any of this works, And we don't want the government to get involved in religious things, And the thing is, so many Jewish people are so left-wing progressive that they believe that they can do things like that, which is really offensive to me as an American. And similarly, we don't agree with the reform or the Reconstructionists or the humanists, this and that. We can't have the government go and say, well, you're giving false advertising, and certainly Messianic Jews. It's like, you should just call yourselves Christians, don't call yourselves Jews. It's not the government's business. And so too, even if you believe that the Hasidic schools that teach no secular studies or very limited secular studies are doing something wrong vis-a-vis Judaism, and that's your approach to Judaism, the government doesn't get to pick which type of Judaism is the true Judaism, because we have freedom of religion here. We don't have the Kehillah structure that there was in Europe, where you essentially had chief rabbis and so forth, and that these were government positions. We might still have the Kehillah structure in certain communities, particularly in smaller communities. I think it's very important. In a halachic sense, that we will say that you can't. It's not hefker. You can't just open up a shul in Elizabeth, New Jersey. That's outside of the main Kehillah. There are halachic reasons not to do that same thing in New Square. That doesn't justify violence, but in a halachic sense. And so too, it's certainly in a community like mine, which is a small community, we have one Orthodox shul year-round, that any time other than the summer to just make a minyan and not to have permission from the Rav is a halachic issue. But again, that doesn't mean I'm going to go to call on the town government to say, well, Rabbi Fishbane is the official chief rabbi of our town, in the town of Bethel. It doesn't work that way. This is America. Same thing it would be in Elizabeth, New Jersey, or Union City, New Jersey, or whatever, where you have communities that are pretty much, that is the community. But what we could say is that if you're doing something outside of this community structure, we see you as the same as the Reform and Conservative. I was told that when I was a Rav in the Young Israel Shul by other members of the community, that if I would do X, Y, Z, doesn't matter how long my payas are, doesn't matter wear Strymon and white socks, they see me as Reform and Conservative. Certain issues about gear and things like that. And I was saying I want to work together with the Kehillah here and do gear here with the Rosh Hashiva who's a dayan, and not have to schlep to New York City or certainly not to Washington D.C. I mean, I know that was the issue, that the other rabbi was insisting we should bring people to what's the guy's name? He's in jail now. Doesn't matter, but that's where they were bringing their Gerim, and I said there's something wrong about this guy. I spoke to him and things on certain issues, and I was like, there's something wrong here, and and it was such a breach of confidence, and to do something so disgusting is what he did. Barry Freundel is his name. And yet the Rav was a Chashuv Rav, and the other shul insisted he brings his Gerim to Barry Freundel. And I was like, all right, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to bring my Gerim to Rupert Steinberg, Lahavdil, who's a real Erlich Dayan, Poisik, and not just some guy with a big chup, So, with all due respect. And that's okay. Vis-a-vis America, vis-a-vis bringing in the secular authorities, the government, we have to do. So anyway, when it comes to these issues, this whole issue of the secular studies in the yeshivas, how do we work with that? Vis-a-vis religion. Again, there are different religious views in the Jewish community, and that's one aspect. And there are certain people who believe that it's wrong to be involved in secular studies. There are people who believe that. There are very few language of the country, or it's certainly there's something wrong with it. And I know people like that, and that's their sincerely held religious belief. And as far as the American government is concerned, they are the ones who decide their sincerely held religious beliefs, not, I mean, I'll explain it like this. I work for the government. I work for the government of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And we are told like this: if somebody is Catholic and they want to have a kosher diet, so then we'll ask their priest, does this person need to have a kosher diet according to Catholic canon law? No. We'll ask we'll say, well, then ask your bishop. We'll say no. The bishop will ask his cardinal. No. The cardinal will ask the pope. He'll say no. So the pope says he doesn't need a kosher diet, and the inmate says he needs a kosher diet, and he's a devout Roman Catholic, and he read this in Leviticus, and he needs a kosher diet. Who does the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania have to listen to, the Pope or the inmate? And the answer is the inmate. If we establish that he has a sincerely held religious belief, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has to accommodate him. Now there are issues with that, but and there are rules, and if you break the rules, they can take you off the diet. But that's the way it works in Pennsylvania. Different states might have different rules, but that's essentially how it works. We'll move on to something else. So the same thing here. If a particular Hasidic community, for example, says it's their sincerely held religious belief that they are not allowed to teach certain things to their boys, the government has no right to challenge that. Rabbis and other communities have the right to challenge that, and individuals have the right to choose which rabbis to follow vis-a-vis the American government. I know a lot of people say, well, you don't know what it's like, the pressure. The thing is, people leave all the time. Some people leave to be modern Orthodox, some people leave to be Litvish, some people leave to be Reformed Conservative, some people leave to be Christians, and some people leave to be atheists. It's America. That's how it works. And just as people have the freedom to go and be atheists, they have the freedom to go and be ultra-Orthodox Hasidim, and America has to protect those rights. But I think it's exaggerated when people say, well, I mean, are there certain people who believe this is the only way to do Judaism? Yes, but I would say that most of the people in, let's say, Satmar community or whatever, are going to say, this is what works for us, but what works for you is fine for you. They're not saying everybody has to be like us. They're saying, you do your thing, we'll do our thing. Live and let live, like the Christians say. And that there is certainly, that's borne out in the traditions and in the sources and in the opinions of later rabbis. Meaning, I forgot the name of the rabbi. I bought a book recently about the question of secular studies and how much we have to be involved in these things and so forth. And they quoted one rabbi. He was from Lublin, I believe, offhand. But what he essentially, and they said he had some affiliation with Eida Chareidis. And what he essentially said was, if excuse me, if somebody, for many people it's fine to study secular studies and even good to study secular studies, but there should be like this shares a plate of like very pure Jews who don't. There should be this small remnant who are like this. And this is a similar thing which I heard a story that someone once told me, a very choshev Talmud Chacham, a Rosh Yeshiva, and a very intelligent person who knows a lot about the world, and yet he said that his understanding was that it's sinful to a certain extent to be involved in the secular studies, even though he was very knowledgeable. And he said that his father learned in Satmar, before the war, and a lot of Bachrim Yigalai tried to get smicha from the Satmar Rav, and the Satmar Rav decided at a certain point he wasn't ordaining rabbis because he was worried, if he ordains somebody, he's going to have to turn somebody down. He didn't want to have to do that. And so this one boy, he was very brilliant, and he learned with the Rebbe, and he learned all the things he needed to be ordained. And he said, I want you to ordain me because you know that I know the material. And he said, I'm not ordaining anybody. And he said, well, I'm an anical from this one. He's like, I'm a sign of these dynasties. He's like, that's exactly why I don't want to ordain anybody, because then they're going to say, that why don't you ordain me? I'm this anical and that anical. I'm from this dynasty, that dynasty. So then he said, yeah, but I don't even know the ABCs. I don't know anything secular. I don't know the Hungarian alphabet or the Romanian alphabet or whatever. And he says, so then right away Satmar Rav took out a pen and paper and started writing a smicha for him, because he understood that there needed to be certain people like this Rabbanan. And the thing was, he had smicha already from someone else, but he knew that he wanted smicha from Satmar Rav, that meant something special. And unfortunately, this boy, he died in the Holocaust, but this one rabbi said, can you imagine who he would have been if he would have survived? This is a story I heard. Again, you can argue that you disagree with this idea, but you can't argue that it's a sincerely held religious belief that the government has to protect. But the other thing is, the yeshivas, it's not like they're giving false advertising. It's not like they're claiming to give a regent's diploma and they're not. They're giving exactly what they claim, exactly what they advertise. And it would be like going to a dairy kosher restaurant. We don't mix meat and dairy in the kosher world. Going to a dairy restaurant, in the kosher restaurant, and demanding to be served meat. And I said, well, we don't serve meat here. This is a vegetarian restaurant. These are the types of things to have in mind. This is my answer. Meaning, you want to say, according to your type of Judaism, this is wrong. I totally fine with that. And the thing is the most of the Satmar people, they are studying a lot of secular things. You open the Yid or the Blad, there's a lot of science and history and things in there. It's not only Judaism. There's current events and politics and science and history, all in Yiddish. So to try to paint it as like, no, this is all they do, and they just sit and pray all day, it's not true, you know. They try not to waste time, although a lot of them might do that too, but you know, that's the fact of the matter of the community. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment.